All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining. I see a bunch of people are coming in right now. I'm going to let a few more minutes go by so more people come in. Why don't you all let me know where you're joining in from today? Awesome. We have Lee from Portland, Zach from Boston, Daniel, the co-founder of Launch Studio is joining in from Germany. Iddo, of course, our panelists, our guests coming in from Tel Aviv. Morgan from France, Lucas from Switzerland, Natasha from Utah, Eduardo from Brazil. Oi, Eduardo, tudo bem? Dois brasileiros aqui também. It's awesome to have people joining from around the world. We have a lot to go through today. So you know what? I think we have already a good number of people. I'm going to get started. So the way we're going to go today is I'm going to start with a few slides, and then we will bring Iddo in probably about 10-15 minutes, and we'll have the meat of our conversation. So let's just dive right in. I'm going to switch over to the slides then. Great. So just a brief introduction. My name is Julio. I'm the co-founder of Launch Studio. Before starting Launch Studio with Daniel, I worked at Kickstarter for 5.5 years, and I ran their team that was responsible for engaging with creators from the design and technology community, finding people who are doing interesting stuff, getting them to launch on Kickstarter, and doing our best to improve their chances of success while they were launching their projects. One thing that I'm going to let you know, as I'm going through the presentation, I won't be looking at the comments as often. So, if you have any questions that you want me to answer later, the best place, and this we'll use for the Q&A as well, is to add those to the Q&A section of Zoom. So that's one of the various different options that you'll find at the bottom of the Zoom interface. Today is our first of our Experts and Launch Studio series of events. This is a series of events that are going to, happen every 2 months or so. And in these events, we're going to have guests who are seasoned experts, mostly from agencies, consultancies. Some of them will be working on service providers or organizations that have deep expertise in the crowdfunding space. So we're really excited to be kicking off this event series today. And we're thrilled that, today we actually have Iddo from Jellop to be our first guest to help us kick off this event series. I've known Iddo for quite a bit. I met Iddo during my time at Kickstarter when they were starting out with Jellop, and they've really built Jellop into this amazing powerhouse, digital ad powerhouse in the crowdfunding space. So we're really thrilled to have him here today with us. And today, our focus is going to be on digital advertising and how can you use digital advertising to drive pledges to a live campaign. You can use digital advertising, of course, before you launch to, identify leads, build your list, but we're not going to focus on that part of it today. We're really going to focus primarily on talking about digital advertising for launching campaigns. My hope is that, at the end of our time together today, which will be about, 75 minutes, you're going to better understand why digital advertising can have an impact on your campaign. And you're also going to have more knowledge on how you might be able to tap into that power, that potential, and even including things like, how do you set yourself up for success before you even launch a project, as you're kind of thinking about pricing of your product, you're looking at your costs and all of that good stuff. Before we dive in further, I'm going to put up a quick poll here. I just want to know, why are you joining us today? Are you joining us because you have an idea of something you might want to launch a long time in the future? Are you actively working on something? Do you have a campaign that's live right now? Are you somebody who just is in the ecosystem, provides services to creators? Or are you just curious about this topic? So just let me know. I'm going to just hang on here for like 2 minutes, and then we will continue. So awesome. It looks like, the vast majority of people, 70% of people, are actively working on something. That's great. You're in the right place. I think this event is probably most tailored to you, as that's, I think, who we were thinking about as we put this event together. People who are actively working on something that they hope to launch on crowdfunding. I see that some people have an idea that they're thinking about launching possibly in the future. a handful of people with a campaign live right now. I'm closing the poll so that everyone can see the results too. And just one person that's curious about the topic. All right, let us carry on. It's always great to know why people are here, because that helps us also as we're having the conversation to tailor some of our topics in case there's some interest or something that we didn't expect. The lay of the land, the next 75 minutes we're going to be together. I'm going to start with a brief overview of why digital advertising matters, and give a little bit of background, how the ecosystem has evolved from when I first joined Kickstarter in 2013 to nowadays, how things are going as far as driving traffic to a campaign page and driving pledges to a campaign. Then we are going to welcome Iddo, and we will have a 40-minute or so conversation about how to succeed, how to tap into digital ads. And at the end, we will leave some time for you to ask your questions as well. I did want to point out that a lot of the questions that I have today were questions that I developed also with a lot of the input from the Launch Studio members. So I wanted to thank all the Launch Studio members. I know a lot of you are here today who contributed your questions to me on Slack that helped me develop the moderation guide that I developed for our event today. So we're going to go through a lot, and of course, I hope that you'll learn a lot. Here are a few things that are going to help you get the most value from today. One is just try to reduce distractions as much as possible. Two, be an active participant. If you have questions, sometimes I'll ask you questions to add something in the comments. Do that. Engage with other people in the comments. If there's sometimes there's little conversations that go on beyond the conversation that me and Iddo are having, and that's great. We totally like it when that happens, and we support that. And lastly, voice your questions when we're doing the Q&A. We hopefully will get through a lot of questions. We might not get through all of them, but that's really an opportunity for you to ask a question to me or to Iddo about this topic. And finally, stay till the end. We have a lot of content packed in this hour, and you never know when that little nugget that might have an impact on what you're doing might come up. So the next and final little poll that I have for you is how familiar are you with Kickstarter? So let me just go on to the next one here. Here's a second poll. I'm just launched that. Are you somebody who's never backed a project? Are you somebody who's backed a couple of projects? Have you backed a bunch? Have you launched projects? Just let me know where you are on that scale. And if you've joined any of our webinars in the past, you'll see that these are questions that we pretty much always ask, because again, it just helps us know who our audience is, who's at the event today. So we see that there actually is, about 25% or a little bit less have actually never backed the project before. And if you haven't, one of the things, if you are seriously considering launching a project on Kickstarter, you should go and back a project today. You should back, as a matter of fact, several projects, because it's really important for you to get familiar with how Kickstarter works, even from a backer perspective. I see that, probably the bulk of people have backed a couple or a bunch of projects. And there is, just a small number that have, and have a few that actually have run a few projects too, which is great. So I'm going to end that, share it really quick so everybody can see that. And now let's carry on. So let's dive in. Why does digital advertising matter so much? So a little bit of background. When I first joined Kickstarter in 2013, product campaigns at that point, and from 2010, when product campaigns really started to appear on Kickstarter, they were really driven by organic interest, organic traffic. And that was largely driven by the nature of social media at that point in time. And also this excitement that, the press also had about crowdfunding in general. This project here that you'll see here is a project called Lumio, which is a great representation of a project of that time period. It's a beautifully designed product. Max, the creator of this product, really created a really well-crafted campaign. But most of the funding he got was based on sharing on social media and also on press covering, his project, in part because they liked this project, in part because it was a project that was being created in this crazy new method of bringing products to life that involved, people pledging money and, months or even a year before they were to get this thing. And, he also, of course, at that point, was benefiting from Kickstarter's, editorial and algorithm love, or support. And between 2010 and 2014, a vast majority of projects that did really well on Kickstarter were doing really well because of these factors. They weren't really relying on digital ads at all. It was really this kind of organic phenomenon that was happening. But then in 2015 is when the shift really became apparent. In 2015, this is the time that I was still at Kickstarter. We started to notice a significant number of creators who were tapping into the power of digital advertising to drive traffic and pledges to their campaign pages. We noticed this in two ways. One, creators told us, and two, we could look at the referrals where traffic was coming in to Kickstarter from, and we could see, this kind of new phenomenon where agencies are rerouting traffic from a Facebook ad to their own domains and then back to Kickstarter. So we started to notice that, and that was the start of a trend that didn't ever abate. By 2016, at that point, digital ads had pretty much already become a really important tool for ambitious creators. And Analog, which is a very recent project, is, I think a good representative of the reality for ambitious creators nowadays. Both Analog and Lumio raised about the same amount of money, close to $500,000. But, Analog, which was, again, a very beautifully designed product, really, really nice campaign page. But even though he got a lot of media attention for his project, he wasn't able to just rely on the organic nature of press and social media sharing to reach that level of success. Jeff, the creator of this product, actually did have to rely a decent amount on advertising in social media and online in order to drive this level of success. So the question, of course, is why did online advertising start eating the crowdfunding world? And here's a few reasons that I attribute to that caused this shift. First and foremost is, social media has changed. Social media is no longer a place that is governed so strongly by virality. If you're a brand trying to reach your customers, even if you're a startup trying to reach people who care about your product, you are going to need to pay money in order to reach your audience. Even if you're trying to reach people who have followed your page on Facebook, you will need to pay money if you actually want to reach them in a consistent and strong way. So, it has become essential then if you want to reach people through these means that you're going to need to pay. And again, of course, you're usually trying to reach people way beyond those people that are already your followers. So even more so, it's really essential nowadays for you to pay to get any kind of reach on social media. Next up, platforms like Facebook, which is the primary platform that digital ads, that Kickstarter creators use for digital ads, it has evolved much more powerful tools for digital ads than were available between 2010 and 2014. So that just means that you can do a lot more and you can get a lot more done through investing in digital ads than you could in the past. It's just much harder to get covered nowadays. So press is something that you can't rely on as a creator anymore in the way that you could. And in large part because crowdfunding itself is not this sexy novel thing that press wants to talk about. So it's a lot harder. And even when you do get covered by press, it's still harder to generate that, to convert that press into actual traffic and conversions on your project page. And also, very much of this moment, we're living in a pandemic. So even real world physical events where you might be able to go and have people try your product and connect with humans who are in your target audience, that's been really limited. This past year, you just haven't been able to go and do that. And even if that's possible in the future, we don't know when that's going to be possible. And I think to a certain extent, I think this more virtual reality that we are living through is going to, some aspect of that is going to continue into the future. So it's something to learn to contend with. I'm sure that people will get creative and find new ways to overcome this actual physical inability to connect with people through more effective virtual means to connect and demo products and so forth. But right now, that is actually one way that people, creators could connect with their audience before that has really been curtailed. So, I just want to point, I'm saying, digital advertising is so crucial. I'm making this point that like creators need digital advertising to succeed on Kickstarter. That's not always true. Creators do succeed still without digital ads. It's an essential tool, but creators do still succeed. Like you have, the team from Transparent that raised $160,000 for this really beautiful, portable speaker that they designed. Their campaign success was not attributed in any significant way to digital ads. We have the team from Emodabit that's live right now on track to raise, probably somewhere $60,000 to $70,000. Their success to date, at least, cannot be attributed to digital ads. They're dipping their toes in now. Maybe their success will be catapulted by it. But then you have even a campaign like the Looking Glass portrait that raised $2.5 million. Their success was not attributed to digital ads. They did try it, but it didn't have returned the ROI that they needed to use it as a tool that could scale for them. But all of these examples were companies that spent a whole lot of time building communities before they launched their products, and they all gave online ads a try. So even for these companies that you see that are doing well, that maybe online ads didn't deliver for them, they all had it as a core part of their toolkit that they put to bear as they were gearing up for launching. And that's, I think, really crucial to keep in mind. As much as I'm saying this is such an important and powerful tool, it's not the only tool. You still need to have an arsenal that you can bring to your disposal and really put a bunch of tools out there to find the one that works for you. And the last point that I'll make here before I bring Iddo in for us to chat is that digital ads, super powerful, but they're also as dangerous as they are powerful. And if you don't understand the financials of your project, using digital ads can actually lead you to lose more money than you raise. And I'm just going to quickly show you how that works. So let's say you have a product that costs $50 to produce, and you're pricing that product for $100, right? You might be thinking, oh, that's great. I'm going to be making 50% of that in profit or revenue. That most of that I can keep as profit. But if you're using digital ads, let's say this might be your cost. If you're having a return on your ad spend of 3x, for every $100 that you spend, you're going to be spending around $33 just in media costs. Agency costs will be another 15 to 20%. So let's say another $20 of that goes to the agency. Kickstarter fees are close to 10%. So that's another $10 goes to Kickstarter's fees. So at the end, your total costs acquiring customers in this scenario and including your production costs would be $113. So you would actually be losing $13 for every pledge that you're getting for your product. So this is, again, just to illustrate that digital ads super powerful, but you do really need to make sure that you understand your financials before you dip into this well. All right, cool. So now I'm going to just bring Iddo in here with us. Give me 1 second. I just have to add Iddo as a panelist again. All right. So, I know most of you are probably familiar already with Jellop. Jellop is just, one of the, crowdfunding digital ad agency that has had probably the biggest impact of any other agencies in terms of helping creators fund their campaigns using digital ads while the campaign is live. They have a really spectacular track record, and both Iddo and Jill, the two founders, are very honest and like candid people. And again, thrilled to have him here. I'm gonna actually turn it over to Iddo for a second, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself and give a little introduction of Jellop before I dive into my questions.
Definitely. Thank you, Julio. So first of all, thanks everybody for coming. My name is Iddo. I'm a co-founder at Jellop. We've been around almost 10 years, often the last 6+ years on Kickstarter since early 2015, just about the right time to dive into this tool, as Julio mentioned. Since then, we've worked with 1,700 projects that have raised in total almost $700 million. And we support them through ad campaigns, performance ad campaigns on Facebook and on Google. I got to speak to, I think, as many creators as any other person on earth, maybe except for Julio, over the years. So it's always it's always great to meet new creators and see what's on their mind. Now, as Julio mentioned, we know each other quite a long time. So I think that between my partner Gil, myself, Julio, and Daniel, I think that we have a beer mileage that spans over 4 continents altogether. So Daniel was actually a creator with who was also our client, and Julio was head of design and tech at the Kickstarter. And I remember when in one of those beer occasions when Daniel told me that he's talking to Julio and this thing of doing something together, and I was very happy because they're kind of like at the very top of the list of people in the industry that we like and love to work with. And I was even more happy to realize that they joined forces to solve a serious problem for creators, because the crowdfunding world, the Kickstarter world, is so different from the outside world. And many times what makes you a good entrepreneur doesn't necessarily make you a good Kickstarter creator. This is kind of like a parallel universe with different buyers, different motivations, different buttons that you want to push. And as a creator, I would want some kind of a playbook, and I think that I've seen some of the materials on the course, and I think that they do a great job solving this problem and getting people into this Kickstarter world. And also, what I like best is that it's kind of like you set the expectations right, in the sense that many creators go for a dream, and that's perfectly fine. But usually, the capitalist dream of getting rich, like a Wall Street wolf, don't happen on Kickstarter. This is a great way for you to kickstart your business, kickstart your product. Usually, don't get rich, and it's very important that creators, I see them as we go, when we work together. I see the difference between those who are well prepared and those that learn on the go. And usually learning on the go when the project is already live is, for the most part, too late.
And I actually want to touch on some of those things that you're mentioning there. So I'm gonna take over now with my questions. And I actually wanted to start with some very basic stuff, just to make sure that everyone understands some of the basic concepts that I think are crucial to our conversation today. So bear with us. I know some of the people in the audience are probably already going to understand some of these concepts, but I'm just going to do a little fire drill. Let's kind of quickly chat, touch on each of. So the first one, can you just explain to people really quickly, what is ROAS?
Right. So ROAS stands for return on ad spend. This is basically a simple division of the dollars that you make, i.e. pledges or revenues divided by the money put in ad spend alone, media, or in other words, the money that goes to Facebook and Google. So you would have, for instance, if I put $100 in ad spend, and this yields $300 in revenues, then my return on ad spend is 3x.
Great, that's perfect. Yeah, because I know that there's some confusion sometimes. People think of it as an overall return on investment number, right, which is not what it is. And I think that's really important that people take that very simple thing that is I think people often get confused about. The next thing that I would love for you to just touch on is, again, very broadly, the idea of variance when it comes to like people, and I'm even later going to want to talk about benchmarks a little bit, but I want to start out by just talking about variance. What is the level of variance that you guys see in performance of ads that you run for different clients?
Right. So, I mean, if you go to extremes, you would have anywhere between 0.2x to 20x, or in other words, where $100 bring in $20 to $100 bring in 20,000. Usually, it's around 3-4x. We'll maybe touch on that later, but it starts at the highest possible point, and the more we grow the budget, the lower it gets down. Usually, it can start as high as 10x and go as low as 2.5, 3x. Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah, because I think that's something that I think creators often want, like, oh, what's the one number that I should use to plan with? Which I would love to have a number like that to give, but it's just the variance is so wide that it's really hard to do that. And I know when we talk about that stuff later, we'll touch on that again. The other thing that I really want to touch on is the idea, just really quickly, how precise is tracking for ads in general? Even let's focus on Kickstarter. We don't need to take precision of tracking of all ads, but because I know that's a big place of question and frustrations for creators.
Definitely. Also, like, this question comes at a great timing, because today or yesterday, the new iOS 14 terms of service, the entire privacy thing and cookies and Facebook and whatnot. So this question comes at a great time. Tracking, all in all, tracking like Facebook pixels or pixels of any other platform are not allowed on Kickstarter. So it's always a challenge to attribute the pledges to the right source, and also to optimize by it, which is even more important. Now, Kickstarter offers a ref tag system. Basically, as a creator, you get a few hundreds of ref tags that you can use to label your traffic and see what comes from where. The problem with it is that ref tags are ref tags. They have the annoying tendency of getting lost, especially when people switch devices or browsers. And we see it many times, like sometimes even 80%, 90% of our traffic comes from mobile. That's where Facebook is strong, right? We're way, like, I think it was around 2015 when Google called it the zero moment of truth, where mobile exceeds desktop. I think for Facebook, it was even earlier than that. It's primarily primarily mobile platform. So many times people see our ads, click through, watch the video, read, get ready, but many times, they just leave and come back later and pledge from their desktop, especially if it's more than just $20 or $20-$30 pledge.
Yeah, and I think this is great, because I think you're getting on the topic of attribution as well, which is the other very related topic, which is how a site like Kickstarter handles attribution, which is a first touch attribution, of course, within the browser or device that you're using. Right. And we don't need to get into the details. It's more, I just want to point out to people, like, tracking and this stuff, is not perfect. It's very far from perfect.
It's a serious problem. Yeah. I can put actually numbers to it. So, like, in the e-commerce world, if you have 5%, 10% discrepancy rate, that's considered good. On Kickstarter, if we have like 25, 35% discrepancy, we're happy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I just wanted to, these are kind of these high level concepts I just wanted to get on everybody's radar, because I think they're going to show up as we talk about other things.
For sure.
And that way we kind of have these out. What I wanted to switch to a little bit now is just to get to what you were talking about earlier, what you were talking about, like the dream, how, so many creators have the dream, they want to raise the 6 or 7 figures. Let's explore like how difficult that actually is by looking at what percentage of campaigns actually get there. And this is where I am going to pull up a slide that I know that you had. Oh, is it not? Okay, let me just check one thing. See, why don't you talk to it? I'm not sure if I'll be able to. Let me see if I can quickly do that. But I think you can talk to those numbers regardless.
For sure. So yeah, so about only 1%, 1 point something percent of creators make it to 100,000, and a tiny fraction of creators, like I think anywhere between maybe 1 to 5,000 projects, make it to the 7-figure club. On average, the average creator raises, like of a successful campaign, raises 25,000. So, and like I would want to note that even those that do make it to the 7-figure club don't get rich just from the Kickstarter. Like they and we'll break down the numbers soon, but I mean, all in all, there's a discount that you're expected to give, and the margins are low, so you basically want to make it as big as you can without losing.
Yeah, and I think so. I think that's really, I think my intention here is just like, it is super challenging to get to those levels. Like you're talking about being part of like 2% of all 200,000 projects that have ever launched on Kickstarter.
Right.
If you're trying to get to 7-figure, you're talking about being 99.9% of projects didn't get close to that or didn't get there. So just I think it's like to level set the level of ambition that you have, and really understand that even though those are the projects that you hear about most often, that doesn't mean that those are that's a very attainable level of success.
For sure. For sure.
So,
I would imagine that the rates among our audience are higher if they're smart enough to attend the webinar.
Of course.
And like, again, going back to how seriously you take the preparation. But yeah, I mean, it's not like, as you mentioned, like, you hear about the successful ones. I can give you 1,000 unsuccessful ones, for every successful campaign.
Which again, to your point, I mean, the goal of us today is helping more people get to this level of success, this 6-7 figure, or whatever the right size of success, will help you push your project forward. And so with that, let's actually shift gears and talk a little bit now about backers, just in terms of like understanding backers. I think your team has a pretty fine-tuned view of like, kind of these high-level backer stats and why they matter. So I figured out here how I can again show some stats. So I'm just gonna show a few stats here that I took from your presentation. So these are all should be very familiar to you. And I'd love for you to as we talk about like why does these matter, like the fact that there is only 6.3 million repeat backers, why is that number significant?
Definitely. So first of all, like I would want to attend like to the number of the left hand side, the 19 million. Like these 19 millions are one-timers. Like I backed a project by my cousin, by my friend, by whatever, or something I really, really liked, and that's about it. The real game is among those 6.3 million repeat backers or so that back tens, if not hundreds of projects. Now, in a healthy campaign, they would make 75, maybe even 80% of your backers. So, and they make like, again, we take 6.3 million, that's for all projects, all categories, from videos, from films to games to tech and design to fashion to whatnot, to books. In our categories that are fueled by advertising, primarily tech and design and games. I would estimate the total number of repeat backers to be maybe 2-3 million.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a tiny fraction of the population. Think about the US. Like US accounts for half of the pledges, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking maybe about 1.5 million at most. Still, like less than a percent point, less than 1% of the entire population, and that's in the US where Kickstarter is strongest. So we're talking about a tiny fraction of the population, which that is also very, very different from the other 99.5%.
Yeah, and I think also that I think the gender split here is something I know you talk about that I think is really something worth noting. That yeah, I mean, I think the gender split is very male oriented. Kickstarter doesn't officially publish it; they actually don't even track gender splits. But this is something that you can,
but we do
get to. Yes, you do exactly, and I think and I think you guys. Considering the amount of pledges you drive to Kickstarter, you guys have a pretty solid understanding of, especially in the categories that you guys really focus on, of what that breakdown is.
For sure. So yeah, so we're talking about 2 males for every female, and what's like this is primarily a male and men's world, but what's even more interesting is that even in almost exclusively female project, like we're now running ads for Nimble, which is like basically a home salon for and the thing is, like, it's for I mean, there is a trend of males painting their but for the most part, like it's for females, and still like a surprising number, like more than a quarter of the backers are male. Like, and this is like it's amazing.
And can you then touch on, I know something you talk about is this idea of broadening your appeal or avoiding the risk of going after niches within niches, because I do think I think Kickstarter and I think like there is some value in terms of there are some niches, like, because you think of Kickstarter, you think of digital fabrication, you think of watches, so people think, oh, Kickstarter is great for niches, which in some ways it is, but I think there's also this danger of this niche within a niche. Can you touch a little bit about that? And I think it relates very strongly to these insights that you were just bringing out about audiences.
For sure. So we touched on the point that Kickstarter is not for everyone. Like it's for a tiny fraction of the population. Now, so let's just, for the sake of the discussion, let's call it 0.5%. Okay, in the US, 0.5% of the population. Now, if you intersect it with something that is niche on its own, I don't know, for instance, like proof. I'm trying to find a good example that would not ridicule it, but let's say, I don't know, lacrosse players, okay, or lacrosse hobbyists. You wouldn't have enough lacrosse players who are also in the Kickstarter game to pull it off. Again, like you'll have surprises. Like we like the more a project we see, like there's always surprises, but for the most part, like take into account that just for launching your campaign on Kickstarter, you're talking to a niche. So you want to make sure that you broaden the appeal to include as many of them as possible. So if this is something like everybody brushes their hair, those who have hair, everybody brush their teeth, like these are the things, and there are hobbies like photography that work great on Kickstarter, bicycles, like anything that has to do with the cyclers. So like I wouldn't say niche cannot work, but it should be a good enough niche so that you don't fall into this niche within a niche trap.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things. I mean, to your point of lacrosse, I think it's probably a good example because it's a small enough sport that it's niche enough. but I remember, when I first started seeing some golf related products on Kickstarter, I thought they weren't going to do well, but some of them did great, but that's also, you can, like, golf is a pretty established, sport. It's very male focused,
For
which
sure,
is another,
for
very high earner focus, which is another thing that overlaps with Kickstarter. So after thinking about it, I was like, okay, there's a bunch of things around this audience that, like, I can understand now why it worked, even though at first, having never seen a product of that type succeed before, I was like, skeptical about whether it had a chance to succeed. And so I wanted to just ask you a very practical thing. What are some of the ways that you guys think about, like, are there some targeting criteria, like on Facebook, that you guys use repeatedly? Of course, I know you guys have a bunch of data that you use, but like, like things like early adopters. Is there any targeting criteria that other creators, things that they could look for, that could help them if they're trying to define a target within Facebook?
For sure. So like, I think that the keyword here is early adopters. Like, this fraction of percentage of the population are the die-hard early adopters. Like, actually, in the literature, they're not even called early adopters; they're called innovators. Like, they're the first 2.5% of the population to adopt a new thing, an innovation. They usually, by the way, the profile is very, very similar to that of Kickstarter backers. Like, they're very tolerant to risk. They usually well off. They can afford this, and their main motivation is, to be the first to lay their hands on something innovative and cool, to show their friends, or just for their own. Just for their own feeling. So, and those early adopters, like the Kickstarter persona, they have their own characteristics that go beyond those of the innovators. But for the most part, like, we're looking for people in any project that we take, and we onboard 2-3 projects a day. We always try to find people in the overlapping area of both circles. One circle is people who have some kind of affinity to Kickstarter. It could be people who have backed projects, who have visited pages, at least heard about it. And the other circle is of the affinity to the product itself. How likely they are to find special interest in that.
And how? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Continue. No. Continue.
We try to get to people. We aim at people who are in the overlapping area of both circles. Now, of course, we're gonna take a lot of people who are members of only one circle. Sometimes not even none of them, but it's enough that enough of them will be to make it work.
Awesome. And so, and I think this is a short question, in the sense, like, is there any way that you know of that your team uses to target previous Facebook backers, Kickstarter backers, without, I know you guys have all of your tool sets and all of your existing communities. Is there a way for somebody who doesn't have that you know of to target previous Kickstarter backers? We can't find a way, so I suspect the answer is no.
Right.
But I just wanted to put out there if there's anything that you.
There is, for the mobile, like, basically, like, you would have on Facebook and Google combined, like, if you also include like combinations, like, you would have tens of different targeting methods to get to people, be it if they like your page or visited your page, or visited another Kickstarter project, or like a certain age, were labeled by Kickstarter, by Facebook or by Google as interested in. Like, you would have many ways, and many times, like, you're pretty limited with how much you can get to
Totally.
qualified backers, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's more about like shooting to aiming at that circle, and whatever works, it gets boosted and you replicate it, trying to replicate it, and whatever doesn't, you just discard it. And so it's always a trial and error. Like this,
that makes sense.
Never an easy campaign.
So where, just from, and I think for Jellop, how do you guys distribute in general, like the budgets that you, I'm not asking for a project specific level, but in general, like what percentage of the investments for clients you make on Facebook versus Google, and are there any other platforms that you guys advertise on as well?
So we focus on Facebook and Google. Facebook is about 80% of our, takes about 80% of the budgets on an average campaign. We try a little bit Pinterest and Twitter, not much to write home about. So it's primarily these two. Now, as far as the actual budget, they vary greatly between creators.
Of course.
Because they have different expectations and different conversion rates and different pricing, and also different characteristics. Like some of them are more risk tolerant, some are more risk avert. But all in all, like it usually comes down, when you factor everything in, it usually comes down to about 10% of the total raise being spent on media.
And is there any attribute of projects, for example, that you, since most of the budget or most of in an aggregate level goes to Facebook, is there a specific type of project that you see doing better on Google, on a YouTube?
Yeah,
then
definitely.
What is the kind of project that you'd say does better on a YouTube?
Right. So you would have to have a very good video, and you would have like the higher the average order value is, the more likely YouTube is to play a key role. Because the thing is, like with higher average order value, that requires more commitment and more knowledge.
Yeah.
Like it's not about someone who's just scrolling down the Facebook feed and clicked on an ad. It's more like somebody who will have already watched the video and clicked through after watching the entire main video. So like these are more qualified, and the higher the average order value is, the more, the stronger the basis of the acquaintance of the backer with
No, that's great. I think this answer is very relevant to one of our members, Alex, who's launching a bike soon, a pretty nice looking bike, and it's a pretty considered purchase. So I think this is actually really good advice for him. And then the last thing around backers that I want to touch on is, I know you guys have this model for how you think about the things of a project page that drive urgency and things like that. I have a few slides that I'm going to put up. I'd love for you to just talk people through how you guys see the engagement that people have with a project page. So here we go. These are the two slides that I know you.
Definitely. So it's important for me, and this is also goes back to what we just discussed. Like, for the most part, Kickstarter is a discovery platform, and this is why Facebook goes so well with it. Like, it's not a well-thought decision-making process where you weigh out your options and compare and read reviews or whatever. Like, you bump into a project in one way or another, and then it comes to this moment of truth when you decide whether or not you're going to hit that green button at the center of the video. Now, if you don't play the video, 99% that you're not going to back the project. Very few people back project. Very few backers back projects without watching the video first. Now, so you have this as a visitor to the page, especially if you came through ads, like, you were scrolling down the Facebook feed, saw something that caught your attention, and you get into the Kickstarter page. Then in a split of a second, you decide whether or not you're going to play that green button. And the only thing that helps you make this decision is what you have to the right of the video, meaning how much you raised, how much did this project raise, how many backers does it have, and how much time it has left. The first two stand for social proof, and the third one for sense of urgency. So I believe that the sense of urgency is pretty evident. When it gets to the hour count, it's really can really drive people to jump on the bandwagon and pledge. And the social proof is also like basically like you could criticize backers for that, like, you know, is this what makes you buy a product? So actually, like, it definitely, like, for something that is well received among the community, and you have a big community of backers with a high amount pledge, like, you would want to see, would be curious to see what the fuss is all about. And in the split second as a backer that you have on the page to decide whether you move on or play the button, like, these numbers are the best advisors of whether or not it's worth your time. Now, these three numbers shown next to the video are only getting better over time. As you grow the number of backers, increase the amount raised, and of course you have less time. So social proof and sense of urgency usually is that they start kicking around 10 days to go. And the closer you get to the end line, the finish line, like, the better things get and the better time it gets to spend advertising dollars, because people, like, are more likely to want to see what the fuss is all about, and also feel more comfortable to join if they see that so many others have already done so.
And you know, it's interesting because I remember this was something very apparent to us also when we started seeing digital advertising take off, is that, you know, beforehand the funding curve of campaigns tended to be, by and large, a big jump on the first day and a small jump on the last day. But as digital advertising tried to catch on, you would see that end of campaign jump kind of expand and become kind of like a ramp at the end, when they could really leverage digital advertising in a powerful way. That was like a phenomenon that made it very clear to us, like, oh, this
definitely. We always try to push as many advertising dollars to the last few days of the campaign, because this is the best time to spend them.
Awesome. So I'm actually gonna jump a little bit, just in terms of a matter of time. I'm gonna jump. Let's talk a little bit about creator preparedness. I think we could spend the whole time talking about audience stuff because it's so rich with things to talk about. But I really think creator preparedness is so key, because as I tried to make that point before I brought you on, you know, if you're not really prepared, if you haven't done your homework, digital ad can actually be something really, really dangerous. It's like a you know, crowdfunding is a super powerful tool, like a chainsaw. You can make this beautiful thing with it, or you can chop your arm off. And you know, and I think this is the moment where we can talk about that. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is you know, maybe the concept of the law of diminishing returns. I know that's something you often talk about. I'll quickly put up the slide that around that. But yeah, like, can you tell people a little bit about that and how it relates to your when you're thinking about ads?
Definitely. So when talking about ads, basically, the more you spend, the less efficiently you can spend the money. In other words, if you were to give me $10 to promote a project, I may be able to, you know, to zero in on the usual suspects and diehard fans, and maybe get you 50x or 100x returns. But if I were to spend $10,000, like, I'm not gonna be able to limit the targeting just to the low-hanging fruit. Like, we would need to spend those advertising dollars on less valuable or less valuable eyeballs, or less likely to pledge eyeballs. Now, the law of diminishing returns is a universal law, but in our world, like, it applies big time. Like, at the end of the day, we always try to spend the money the best we can, So we spend the first 1,000 the best we can, but then when we spend another 1,000, it means that it's not the best way we can spend those 1,000, but only next to what we did with the first $1,000.
Yeah, no, that all makes a lot of sense, and I think that's something, even I think some creators think, oh, as I spend more money, I'm going to optimize my campaign better, and it's going to give me better results. And I think that works up to a point, and then you start really feeling this this law of diminishing returns put a lot of pressure. Can you touch on a little bit about like what do you see as talk about margins and what kind of margins from your experience creators need to have to be able to tap into online ads?
Right. So let's start at the end. Like you would want to run ads at around 3x. This is usually scalable on Kickstarter. It's way better than what you can ever dream to achieve outside Kickstarter. Like most e-commerce entrepreneurs, like they would die for 1.5, 2x. They would kill for 1.5, 2x. On Kickstarter, you can sometimes get higher, but 3x is like where you pretty much, it's a good benchmark. So 3x in return on ad spend means that 33% of your item price, like the selling price, is going to go for media, for Facebook and Google. You're going to have to add to that the 15%, 20%, 15% or so for the ad fees. Here it's 20%. You would also pay Kickstarter, Stripe, and pledge management some 10% more. So all in all, like to break even, or at least break even, you would want to allow yourself to play as aggressively as 3x, which means that your cost of goods sold should not exceed 40%. Meaning the cost, when I talk about cost of goods sold, I mean incremental production costs, like no overheads, no externalities, just like, you just want a backer. How much would it cost you to produce another unit to ship it to them? And the magic number is here is 40. You need about 40% so that you can play. The cost of goods sold should make up to 40% so that you can play as aggressively as 3x, which is another way to talk about to say it is basically your product should cost at least 2.5 times as much as it costs you to produce it. Yeah,
no, that's great. And I think the last, I want to turn over to Q&A in a minute. There's just one last thing that I want to touch on is, because this is something that came up a lot in our community, is having like an appropriate set of creative assets. Like what are some tips that you can give people in terms of developing creative assets? I know that I get a lot of questions from people being like, what are those ads with the red arrow pointed at a product? Can you tell people a little bit about how you guys think about like creating an ad that converts?
Right. So an ad, like there are so many creative types on Facebook and on Google, but all in all, like you would want to have a good reservoir of assets, of good videos, good GIFs, and good images, and especially goes for the video. Like, and the best thing to go about it, like we're not a creative studio. We're not a creative studio. And basically, like we work with the raw materials provided by the creators. Like we adjust them to the world, to the lingo and to the imagery, but for the most part, like it's their raw materials. So you would want to have the best raw materials as possible and as many of them as possible. My best my best advice on how to, how to find good ones is research, like do your research on Kickstarter, try to find 5-10 projects that you like, that did well with similar audiences or solved a similar problem, and see how they did it and with whom did they do it. Most Kickstarter creators are very reachable and love to help. You can just ask them, who did that great video of yours? And you'll just get the best possible reference you can get.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and I think one tool that I just share with people, if you go to masterclass.launchstudio.com/services, there we've compiled a list of the service providers that creators in our network have recommended, includes videographers, things like that. Definitely though, reaching out to creators, connecting with them is a super rich resource. I have a bunch of other questions I want to ask you, but I want to give our audience a chance to ask questions. So sure. I'm gonna flip it over here to the other camera and I'm gonna pull up the questions. Let's start kind of going through those. So what I was gonna ask everyone, if you have questions, the place to add them, please don't add them to the chat. I won't be looking at the chat. I'll be looking at the Q&A area. So that's really where I want you to make sure to direct all your questions. If you put a question in the chat already, please just copy and paste it over there. I am going to start with the first question here. I'm just going to go down from the top. While searching for a marketing partner, I found most had very scattered shotgun approach, emphasizing quantity over quality and learning what sticks. Sometimes this learning phase results in out-of-touch ads that create bad optics, particularly in a small niche market. How do you find the balance between an authentic bespoke message and an algorithmically designed high interaction message? And I think this actually dovetails nicely with what we were just talking. What would you say there?
Right. So there's no. I'm afraid there's no close, one size fits all answer for that. It really, like, there are some conventions that work great. You mentioned those clickbaits with those right arrows that sometimes those red arrows that sometimes work great. You would have, like, actually on Google, I've been, like, for the search campaigns that usually don't make much of the spend. Usually most of the spend on Google is YouTube, but for the search campaigns where it's available, I'm actually using dynamic ads where it shows the most up-to-date number of backers and amount pledged. Like, this is kind of like AI-powered ads, and they work great. So sometimes you would have a machine also, like, we just try AI-powered ads where, like, you would have like an AI assistant reading out or narrating the narration. So, like, there are conventions that work better, but again, like, it's a new story with every single campaign. Like, also, like, there's a big difference between a $500 product and a $20 product in terms of your messaging.
So Dave, sorry about that. I'm just reading David's message question now. can a campaign be successful with earned media only? If so, how much time would you recommend to set aside? What's the best channel, assuming one wanted to focus on earned media and not paid ads? And I'll start answering, and then I think you can also add to it. Dave, I think it is really difficult nowadays to be able to do that, but it is possible. I think some of those campaigns that you saw that I brought up in the slides at the top of today's event, I mentioned 3 campaigns that actually have done that have succeeded, really primarily based on their community building engagement, and they have various different levels of success. One raised millions, one raised close to 200,000, and one is right now at like around 50. They all spent years building a community. All of those campaigns had spent years, really long time, really focused on engaging with their niche, whether their niche be people into biometric sensing, people into holographic displays, or people into just beautiful, home electronics with a modular, sustainable design. And so they were all able to do that. The strategies that they did that were very different. The home electronics one had a strategy where they just got a lot of press attention, a lot of attention in uncrates of the world early on. So it was very kind of like media driven. The other 2 was very much more kind of engaging with like communities of users, with like people who were into early volumetric displays before it was a big thing, through real world events, maker fairs, and other events like that, and also through online forums and so forth. So they use different approaches, but it's just like that kind of approach. It ultimately requires you building a profile for yourself and your company as like a lead practitioner in a space, and then that when you launch your product, usually years after you started working and started becoming known in that space, you're able to do that. So the only other way you can do it is through luck, which of course is not a strategy. It's something you might hope for. I don't know if you have anything to add there. Wait, I think you're muted now. Yeah.
Yeah. I pretty much. I think you pretty much covered it all.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll just go on to the next one so we can try to get as many of these as possible. So, David Barreto, how much does running a campaign during August affect your success? So let's focus on that from an ad perspective. What is your how? I mean, I think let's even broaden that. Like, what's seasonality in the ad world? Like, what is that? What are the times of year that you would say might be more difficult to succeed from an ad perspective?
Right. So in terms of paid ads, there's not much difference because you pay per visitor or per click or per impression. Like if people don't see your ad and don't click on your ads, like you don't pay. So like we have very little seasonality in terms of return on ad spend, and in terms of volume, not month of the years and not days of the week. Like weekends are just as strong in terms of returns, or just as strong as a weekday. Organically, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, even in Christmas, is there no? I mean, only because we hear.
Yeah, but you pay only for those who click through. Like if they never saw the ad, then like you wouldn't pay. We're more like, I would say that in terms of ads, like our bad season is around end of like second half of November and December, where first of all you have everything goes to holiday shopping, and advertising costs go up, like CPMs, cost per mille go up, and also the big brands are left with that year's spend, that if they don't spend, they don't get the budget for next year, so they want to spend it all before the year ends, and this also takes the prices up. But to answer directly to David's question, like August is an okay month to go live in. You would have like organically, you can expect, I don't know, 10%, 20% less than what you would have had. Either like you would have like less backers on Kickstarter, but you would also have less projects competing for their attention. So pretty much evens out.
And I remember that, I mean, from Kickstarter standpoint, I remember back then, like the activity on Kickstarter goes down a little bit that part of the summer, but it's the success rate of projects doesn't necessarily go down, and the average raised by projects doesn't necessarily go down, though the number of projects and the number of backers on the site goes down a little bit. So it's an interesting, I think people often assume, oh, that just means that I should avoid that. But, you know, Peak Design, which is the most prolific creator who's raised the most money in the design and tech category, they, you know, have launched many projects during the summer months. Like they used for a while, that used to be their time to launch. So, all right, so let's move on to the next question from Damien. What are strategies for getting people who might be interested in a project to overcome the barrier of signing up for a Kickstarter account? Do you guys have any thoughts on that beyond?
It's a great question. That's always a challenge. What you can do as a creator is, first of all, like help them, like walk them through in the FAQ question section, and you know, and sometimes even the story, like, you know, just in simple words, just to translate the lingo of what is a pledge, what is a backer, when will you get your product, what you can expect, what prevents you from running away with our money, and even more importantly, like, and this is also good for repeat backers, but primarily for newbies, like keep it simple, not too many options, not getting too deep into the features, and like you want to keep it simple for people to onboard, for people that are trying something new that is very strange. Like, I mean, expecting people to prepay, get now and pay now and get later is not something, you know, that they're used to. So try to make it as easy and as easy, as smooth as possible on them.
Awesome, that's great. And I think the only thing I'll add there, just dovetailing to what Iddo's saying, I've actually seen, you know, like I think nowadays, I think creators sometimes think that, oh, I don't need to add a little section on my page about exactly that, like how to back a project. What does it mean to back a project? Like, I think it's actually pretty smart to include a section on your page that specifically addresses those. And it might be a little video even that walks people through it. It might be a graphic that like helps people understand, you know, doing a pledge is like pre-ordering the product and blah, blah, blah. So, and then the other thing I've seen people do that I think have done really well, I know that two members of our community did, the Tidbit team, is they actually, in their email that they sent to their community at least to get them to back the project, they actually explained to them how to back the project in the email. Right. And they gave them very clear directions so that people wouldn't get there and like, oh, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this whole terminology is. Like they already set people's expectations. So when they got there, they had that, you know, ready to go.
I would add, like, we have a chat bot on Facebook called Sebastian that answers, like, you know, basic Kickstarter questions, like how do I back a project? So this is also something that you may want to consider, but again, like explain it to them, and for the most part, like make it easy on them. Like don't give them too many choices and don't confuse them. Like
yeah, no, I think that's a huge. I'm gonna actually, Damien, I'm gonna skip your next question so we can have one or two more questions from other, and we'll try to get more of these answered after the fact that I can follow up with our attendees with answers to these. But Eduardo, what is the recommended time to start ads before a campaign is live? I know that our focus today was like ads during the campaign, and I think you heard Iddo talking about how for them, you know, their model here is like actually when you get close to the end of your campaign is where they can have the biggest impact. When it comes to like running ads to build your leads, a list of leads before a campaign, you know, usually I think that's something you want to start at the very least. If you are trying to build leads, build a list before you launch, at least 6 weeks before is a good. I mean, creators sometimes do only four weeks, you know, but I think you're trying to give yourself a little bit of breathing room so that you can, you know, spend your budget little by little and optimize and so forth. But we'll actually touch on that more in one of our future webinars. You know, one of our next webinars will actually focus more on this kind of pre-campaign list building, including talking about using ads for that. And I think, you know, we are now at time. So what I want to do, I'm going to wrap up now to respect everyone's times. I'm sorry that we didn't get to answer everyone's questions. This is something that we will go back and we'll send a replay of the event in the next 24 hours or so. In the next week or so, I'll send some additional updates. Just a few things before everybody drops off. I wanted to first off, thank Iddo for joining us here today. Iddo, we really appreciate your time and your wisdom, and for you to be willing to share that with everyone here who came. I also wanted to share with everybody a tool that we've created, which is this online ad return calculator. It essentially helps you make sure that when you're thinking about online ads and you're thinking about our return on ad spend, you actually don't forget to think about any of those costs when you're trying to project out how much you're actually going to earn from money that you put into digital advertising to drive pledges on your live campaign. So here's the URL down there, go.launchstudio.com/ad_calc, C-A-L-C. So that's a tool that's publicly available to everyone here who came today. So, it can be, just an easy way to help you make those calculations as you're projecting. And as Iddo mentioned, like when you're thinking about return on ad spend, chances are, if it works for you at any scale, you're probably not going to get a much better return on ad spend than around $3. It happens, but it's not common. So that's a number to, to think about as like when you're trying to think what's the benchmark that I should use in terms of return on ad spend. That's a number to consider using. And now two other really quick things. Upcoming events. We have some upcoming events that I just really quickly wanted to announce. On the 27th of May, we are going to be talking to Peter from Peak Design, the founder of Peak Design, just kind of hearing about their experience. Both we'll get some nitty-gritty, tactical advice and tips, but we'll also just talk about, their kind of journey, founding a really successful company on Kickstarter and continuing to launch products on Kickstarter. And the other event that we also are going to be having in June is we're going to be talking to, it's going to be the next one of our Experts in Launch Studio series. We're going to talk to Lena from Nook, where we're going to talk about the pre-campaign part of the work, including a lot of talk about digital advertising for that phase of your efforts. And with that, now I will say goodbye to everyone. Thank you all so much for sticking with us. And Iddo, thanks again.
Thank you
for joining.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks,
bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye-bye.